welcome to Godless Bitches. Today we're talking about religious education in the public school system, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about the upcoming Supreme Court case that's going to be argued, I believe, January 22nd. And that might be before or after this episode comes out, but either way, you're going to get a lot of information about past precedent and about kind of why we should be concerned about this and why this should be on our radar. So for the last 50 years or so, the United States Supreme Court and nearly every state in the U.S. Have argued over the right to religious instruction and indoctrinations in public schools, from school prayer to displaying the Ten Commandments and In God We Trust on walls and on buildings, and even restricting access to scientific information like course curriculum and textbooks. We're kind of forced to ask ourselves, are we violating the Establishment Clause or free speech rights in teaching children religious belief in publicly funded institutions and endorsing participation in Christian culture?
And so before we can talk about that, we have to talk about what the Establishment Clause actually is, because I, for one, don't know.
Okay, perfect.
The Establishment Clause is first part of the First Amendment. It's prohibiting the government from establishing any religion. This is our country's religion, any formal religion. And it also prevents the government from endorsing one religion over the other and remaining a non-neutral ground for land of the free, home of the brave, includes religious freedom.
Right.
That's what falls under the Establishment Clause.
This is one of the amendments?
This is part of the very first one.
It's part of the very first one.
Part of the first one.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of right.
So
I think it's like the first two lines.
Okay.
Of the First Amendment.
And this is part of the great American experiment.
Mm-hmm.
There was no. This was a new idea to have a country that was founded outside of a religious structure.
Right.
And so that's why we care so much about it, because this is what we were fighting for in the founding of this country.
It can also be argued that a large part of the immigration influx in the 1700s and 1800s were escaping religious persecution.
Exactly.
To go to a place where they can practice whatever they believed in freely.
So the Establishment Clause was put in later.
No, that was part of the original Ten
It was one of the very
the
first
beginning.
things handled, because they were deathly afraid of it turning into England,
Right.
where people were being beheaded and hung, drawn, and quartered for just being Catholic or Protestant. Or
Right, depending on who the ruler was,
Whoever the
suddenly that was
monarch
the
was.
country's religion, and everybody else was persecuted for not adhering to it.
Oh, so you're saying that this country was intended to be secular?
Oh, it's almost like that.
Almost like that. Almost like they came here fleeing from religious persecution to practice whatever the hell they wanted.
That was impressive. All right, so before we jump into the court case that's being heard this month, we do want to talk a little bit about past precedent and give you kind of the whole scale picture of the battle that has been being fought for the right to protect our children from indoctrination in public school.
And also for you guys to have the same kind of, we're arguing this shit again
Yeah.
Right.
feeling that we all have.
It's an ongoing battle. It doesn't stop.
Like, really? The first one I can remember was Engel versus Vitale, which authorized a short, it was the New York State Board of Regents. Shocking, New York, right? Authorized a short voluntary morning prayer, which was non-denominational. And people were like, no, this was clearly Christian driven. They weren't allowing children to have Muslim prayer during various points of the day. Clearly, we're favoring one religion over the other.
Right, non-denominational is religion.
Non-denominational.
Right.
Right.
And so they brought this to Supreme Court, I believe, right?
It was 6-1. They voted that this absolutely violated the fucking Establishment Clause, saying, no, we shouldn't be having children praying in schools at all. Non-denominational, denominational, public schools. We
What
should
year was
clarify
this?
public schools.
Right.
1962, I believe.
So they knew this in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, this
Okay,
was
interesting.
kind of it kind of came with the flower child 60s spiritual awakening.
Yeah, the 60s and 70s was kind of the beginning of what we consider to be the evangelical conservative Christian movement as we understand it today. Prior to that, there really wasn't that same political force that they had. And so as you'll see all of these take place in the 60s through the 80s.
We should also touch on the fact that during the Cold War, the 50s and 60s, the reason why God became so infused in this country is the USSR were communist. And the way that they bolstered that we were better than people was these godless commies.
Exactly.
And we have God on our side, and we have God protecting us, so we are going to be safe from the Soviets. And this is where In God We Trust became so popular, and now we have to pray in schools, and praying in school became just as important as bomb drills.
Interesting.
Well, the under God part of the Pledge of Allegiance was added around the same
Was
time.
right around the same time, right?
Yeah, which is why today, if you're wondering, you hear so much connection between atheism and communism. Like, oh, you're an atheist, you must also be a communist, or
Socialists.
you're a socialist.
Socialists.
New word.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of a holdover from the 1950s, 1960s
Right.
Cold War era.
McCarthyism
Yeah,
era, right.
for sure. So that was that. And then I know that there was one in 1963 with Madeleine Murray O'Hair as well.
Yes, and that one got lumped into, it's more known as the Schempp case,
Okay.
Schempp versus Pennsylvania, which fell along the same lines, except Madeleine Murray O'Hair argued that her son specifically should not be forced to participate in prayer in public schools. Prayer should not be an option, even if the children do not want to participate in this. They were hearing a case at the same time, so they lumped it into the Schempp case, which was also Pennsylvania stating that, hey, our kids are being forced to pray in school. SCOTUS said again, this violates First Amendment. Children should not be praying in a public school system that is funded by government money.
Right, which is
Period.
the distinction.
And this was the bold move of, we're going to be a Christian nation. Our kids are going to pray in school and specifically ask God to protect them. 2-3 cases later, guess what? Now we have to find other tactics.
Right. So
Now we're going to get into smaller laws.
switching
Texting,
things up.
text of everything.
Yeah. So once prayer had been banned effectively in public schools, and those first tactics of, okay, we're going to ask for this right out of the gate.
The strong arm
Right,
is what
exactly.
I like to call it.
So states and religious organizations then had to use subtler tactics and kind of come at it from the side to try and get their way in. So I know there are a couple other cases that kind of stemmed from that.
Stone versus Graham. This was, we're going to play with this a little bit. We're not going to outright have the kids pray. We're not going to sit here and tell the kids that God is the way to go. We're just going to display the 10 Commandments in schools so that every time a child looks up, whether it be the front door, in a hallway, wherever the hell they're putting it, they're, as they're mindlessly going through their school day, they've got the 10 Commandments being looked at them. The Supreme Court said, are you actually kidding me right now? Like, now it's an actual Bible quote that's on the wall. Sorry, we can't do this. However, we've learned how to play with language in this country. And because In God We Trust is now considered our national motto, states like Tennessee, which I've experienced personally, South Dakota, I believe possibly Mississippi, has now turned around and put In God We Trust. And the state law is that it has to be displayed prominently in a school where people can access it. I know when I've walked into my son's school, it's right there at the front door. It's an In God, and it's placed so patriotically and beautifully. It's the Statue of Liberty in black and white with, the rustling waves of New York Harbor, and then In God We Trust as soon as you hit the door. And then it's in every hallway. Because by state law, we now have to, the school cannot say no. It is now state law that it has to be prominently displayed somewhere in the school.
That's current?
Current.
A current law.
That's a current law in about 4 or 5 states now.
Yeah. I remember one school, I don't remember which one exactly, had they got around that by just putting $1 bill in a frame on the wall. It's like, yeah, technically.
Oh, you know what? I think that's when my son finally leaves his school. I think that's the gift I'm going to give them.
There you
it's
go.
just $1 bill on a frame. Just put that right on the front desk. But it's you walk into the building now. They have a series of doors, so it's on the first door, and then you have to go through the second door, and then it's on the front desk too.
It sounds to me like in the first two, it sounds like the Supreme Court is aware that
We can't.
this
pray.
is wrong,
Yeah.
this is not okay.
Yeah.
And it seems like 5 years later, they're like, just kidding, we don't really think that. And then years later, they're like, oh, just kidding, we don't really think that either. And it's like, so
because it comes
why
down.
are they
it comes down
why
to
are
language.
they able to set a precedent on something if they can't, if it's just weak?
Well, the thing is, a goal would be to make sure you're not overstepping and making it easier for other cases later on to be promoted. So, for example, if you made it legal if you sanctioned school prayer, the concern then is that other religions would use that same ruling
Right.
to force your kid to pray to Allah,
Right.
or to pray to Satan or
Right.
whatever,
Right.
And so that's the concern. And they're like, okay, we can't say that you can promote school prayer. Like that's not something we can do because we're scared of what precedent that's going to create later on.
But they
But it only talks about that specific thing. If they come at it from a slightly different angle, then they can argue a whole bunch of other reasons for it.
It's very much, Mommy said I can't touch the stovetop because I'm going to burn my hand, but I can put my hand on the oven door. Can I put my hand on the oven door?
Right, and then there has to be a whole other negotiation about, okay,
About
when you phrase
why.
it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
is.
it's a semantics game, but we're back to that.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I understand now. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think we can...
But that's why this is so important that we understand this, is because we are ultimately the people that are in control of how this actually turns out. Right?
For the most part, as long as we're, voting.
Well, because we elect the people that go and represent us. And so if we're a country that doesn't understand how this works, then, it can go to where we could have the worst president ever, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't know how this works.
Right. And that president picks our Supreme Court justices.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what we want to do with Kavanaugh.
okay.
And so what we are, the thing is, okay, so saying something violates free speech, for example, is different than saying you can't place an image here, because that's a different concept altogether.
Right.
So then you have to think, okay, so the reason people were okay with In God We Trust in schools is because they were like, well, it's already part of our motto from 1955. So it's clearly secular. So it's not a religious thing. So we had to put it there. So it is all, it's semantics that's trying to get your win in. But the argument there is that, well, it's not religious. It's part of our culture. It's part of our heritage.
But when it comes down to the Ten Commandments, it says, well, we're not forcing the kids to pray. We're not forcing them to take a break from their day and pray. It's just in the classroom like any other poster.
Right, exactly. Except it's 10 times more prominent on the front door.
Yeah,
Okay.
Do you know what's something very interesting, though? I watched the documentary Hail Satan.
Oh.
It's so good.
I haven't seen it.
Amazing. It talks about the Satanic Temple's activism and how they use it to thwart certain religious favoring rules. Because, again, people are like, okay, put 10 Commandments up. I'm also putting a statue of Baphomet up. Never mind.
Yeah.
Like suddenly everyone is okay with taking them both down. But the interesting thing I found out there that a lot of the 10 Commandments monuments that you see on courthouses and like on public land were actually part of a promotional stunt for the movie The 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
And Cecil B. DeMille paid to have these things erected as part of a movie production stunt. And then they just stayed. And
my
now
God.
people don't know that. And so they're like, oh, this valuable, really impressive, like meaningful monument is going to be torn down. Like, no, it was a publicity stunt.
This is Cloverfield gone bad. No. But it's displaying our Christian nature. And it's like, no, Charlton Heston just wanted to make money.
Yep, basically
That's all. That's all it was.
Again, that's why that In God We Trust on the dollar bill is so prominent. It's like, it's about the money.
It's about the money. And I mean, let's what are you going to do? You go to your kid's school, right? You drop your kid off at school to go to work, to make money. That says In God We Trust, to go put it in the collection basket. What do we think this shit is about? Come on.
So another way that they're trying to get more religious instruction to school is by restricting or changing the kinds of textbooks and curriculum that their students use, which I think of all of them is the most insidious because this is actively tampering with, what our kids are learning.
Especially at an impressionable age where they don't have the brain development to distinguish fact from fiction. Well, this is why kids have imaginary friends.
Some adults don't either.
Granted, but it's fully expected for a kid to have an imaginary friend because we're like, kids lie a little bit because they kind of have a hard time distinguishing from the truth and reality. And then
Kind
it's
of
like,
expected for many adults to have an imaginary friend too.
I think some adults would be better off. More imaginary friends. I know I would, but
I know that we believe in evolution, right? And I mean, I think that it's pretty obvious, but these people think that it's pretty obvious that creationism is the way. And so they honestly believe that that's the reality. So how do we prove to them that this is important, like, without having that religious discussion, which you can't really do in
peer-reviewed articles that they're never going to read. That's how we prove it to them.
Yeah, the issue here is I think to get on a quick little tangent, is the use of the word believe, really.
Right.
In this case. Because
A
we can say
theory.
we believe in evolution, but
Right.
that doesn't have the same meaning as believe in creationism. That's a category error, I believe. So what you're doing is using the same word, but it means different things. For us, we take the evidence to inform us to make an informed decision,
Right.
backed up by all scientists, really.
Okay.
And that's how we're using believe when we
Right,
say that.
Right.
And that is objectively a better way to approach things like
However-
instruction and public school.
You will meet the argument of, well, evolution is a theory. So why can't creationism
Right.
be
And then-
a theory?
And then you sit down with them and you get
And then
coffee,
after slow blinking,
and you say,
no,
"Let's have this talk."
after about slow blinking 25, 30,000 times, hey, let's go get some coffee and let me explain to you how scientific theories work.
Well, I didn't know until recently. I didn't know the
neither did
difference
I.
between,
Right, but
between a theory and a theory. You know,
Right,
like,
but when you do figure it out, you know how you get that.
yeah, I've gotten that look many times.
Oh, yay, podcast.
And it's, not, it's you don't
Hi,
mean to
everyone
make
on the
people feel
podcast.
bad. You don't mean to make you feel bad. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, but that's one thing that they have been trying to do is make
Right.
sure of the restrictions. And this was especially prevalent in the 70s. And
And is now making a resurgence.
unfortunately, yes,
Yes.
especially here in Texas, there's a whole debate about that. Actually, that just happened a couple of years ago.
2017,
Okay.
I believe, and that was Texas HB 1485, which was passed. And I know we shouldn't be reading things from a computer, but I need to get this out properly. HB 1485 would allow teachers the academic freedom to encourage students discussing and coming to conclusions other than science-based facts on things like global warming, evolution, and the quote-unquote, and this was in quotes in the bill, chemical origins of life,
They were in quotes in the bill.
as well as human cloning. It was in quotes in the bill. While HB 1485 prohibits teachers from endorsing religious-based beliefs, this is, and this was the argument made against it, this is a very slippery slope in having young students coming to conclusions other than fact-based evidence in school, in a classroom. They are allowing children who have not been taught about this to discuss amongst themselves whether or not evolution is real without teacher intervention other than, hey, little Timmy, don't yell and throw things at your classmates because you think he's going to hell. They are allowing children to say, this is what I believe, and the teacher has to sit there and say, well, that may be. That's okay, little Susie.
That's
That
the
may
experience
be."
I had.
Yeah, well,
Wait, like in actual public school? Mm-hmm.
really?
Whoa.
Yeah, actually, I was in 6th grade and I got a kid in trouble for saying, "Oh my God."
Really?
And I remember I was such a little brat. This girl got really mad. She just went, "Oh!" And I just remember looking at her and going, "It's for your own good."
Oh, no.
Yeah, because that's what I was told.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
You
I remember
can't say
getting
that.
grounded for saying, oh, my God.
Yeah, that's a bad word.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You know?
I can't relate. I'm from
That was
New
in
York.
public
We said
school.
way worse than oh my God at that age. Like
Yeah.
way, way, way worse than that.
No, but this actually did set a really bad precedent because this past November in 2019, Ohio passed the Ohio Student Religious Liberties Act of 2019. And really, I feel like anytime religious liberty is in a bill anywhere, you just have to triple check it. Just keep an eye on those because this is really bad. This is allowing students to give false answers on tests that correspond with their religious beliefs, even if it's factually inaccurate. So if you are taking a biology test
Right.
and someone is asking you about the chemical origins of life, you can write, didn't happen, 6,000 years ago, God said bang, and the teacher needs to count it.
God said bang, or that the earth is, 6,000 years old.
So how do we fix this? I mean, do we get a bunch of scientists to come and say, "Hey, fix all this curriculum and tell these people what's up"? Like, what do we do? Like, how do we?
We have to, most of these are passed by the state, and state elections would help with that. But again, a lot of these are.
They do help with that. And it comes up to standing up. One, look at what your kid, look at your kid's textbooks if you got kids in school. Take a look at them. I mean, my kid doesn't do textbooks anymore. I guess I don't I'm old and I remember textbooks with.
Oh, they have computers now, don't they?
They have tablets.
I guess
They have
that's
tablets.
right.
But
Yeah,
I remember
I
the
heard
days
that.
of like folding the brown paper bag over the textbook. So I'm oldish, ladies and gentlemen. But he has these handouts that come home all the time. Take a look at what your kids are bringing home. Another thing I think we also need to touch on is the lemon test. And if you ever hear, this is the 3-prong lemon test. If you ever hear of an issue with your child in public school, these are the 3 statutes they're named after plaintiff Alton Lemon, which details legislation concerning religion. The statute must have a secular legislative purpose. I can never say that word right.
Legislative.
The principal or primary effect of the statute must neither advance nor inhibit religion. And this is where religious people get caught up on, especially with what's wrong with teaching creationism? What's wrong? And it's not they never turn around and say, we're going to pull evolution out of the books. They never say that. It's, well
actually, they did. Epperson versus Arkansas.
Epperson versus Arkansas in 86, they tried to pull it straight. And I mean, it's Arkansas, so they're slightly behind the times on coming up to secularism.
These days, that wouldn't fly.
No, these days this wouldn't fly. But in 86, 30 years ago, they were trying to, and I believe SCOTUS said, no.
Yeah, that was considered
Are you kidding me?
First Amendment right.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
That is another thing that you can do, though. Keep an eye on what your kids are reading, but
Yes.
also go to court. Contact the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They have lawyers who are there to help you sue your school, your local area, your government, these court cases, these precedents that are extremely helpful and validating do not come into existence without the people who are going to court to defend their rights.
And I will say the final 2 are where we get the most entanglement. The principal primary effect of the statute must neither advance nor inhibit religion, also known as the effect prong. This is where the religious right argues, well, if you're not teaching about our religion, it's inhibiting the lessons in us practicing our religion. Number 3 is the statute must not result in excessive government entanglement with religion. What they're saying is, well, if we get the government involved in these teachings, aren't we having the government excessively entangled in our religion?
Okay, so that covers past precedent a little bit. Now let's talk about the court case that's currently on the books to be argued in the Supreme Court on January 22nd. The highlight is Espinoza versus Montana Department of Revenue, and this is from CNN. The controversy stems from a student aid program created by the Montana legislature in 2015 that allows individuals in the state to donate up to $150 to a scholarship organization and receive a tax credit. The organization then uses these donations to fund scholarships at qualifying private schools. Soon after this was released, the Montana Department of Revenue adopted a regulation that excluded religiously affiliated schools specifically from the program in order to maintain compliance with the free exercise clause. And 3 parents who had been planning on using these scholarships for Christian schools sued the Montana Department of Revenue. And so that is the current case. The Montana Supreme Court said that it did violate the First Amendment and deactivated the program. The current presidential administration told the Supreme Court that the state provision at issue violates the federal Constitution. So now they need to hear it at the Supreme Court on the 22nd.
Of January.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to rewind. And what is the free exercise clause? What is that?
The free exercise clause basically says that you can't prohibit and you can't discriminate public funding based on religion. You can't turn around
based on religion.
Right. You can't say we're only going to distribute this to Christians, Muslims, whatever, and you can't say we're exclusively not distributing this to because you're Christian.
Okay.
Is what it is.
Okay.
Which kind of butts up against the Establishment Clause. And this is what they're arguing is, well, this is religious-based discrimination. These are religious schools. However, if we start providing funding, especially if they're a specifically Christian school, well, now we're being able to say, okay, well, we're going to enforce Christian schools. This opens the door. Yes.
That's interesting. So basically, they're going to have to they're not liking that they're discovering that they're going to have to drop the religious courses in order to become a federally funded school, and so they're saying,
or at least qualify for
we're
grants,
the same
right.
thing. These classes are just as valid, just as important, and so we should be seen as an equal level school, right?
In order to obtain funding, correct.
Right. This is more about the parents and children who are trying to get into the schools
Right.
rather than the schools themselves. The schools themselves are well aware of their
Yes.
ability to get or not get certain grants. But these are parents who are like, we want to use this grant that we got to send our kid to a Christian school. And the Montana's legislature nixed that option for them.
Oh, well, so then that's good.
Right. This isn't like Title I. Title I is federal grants that go towards schools who have a larger proportion of children living in poverty, and are lower performing or lower funded schools, so they push funding into these schools. This isn't for schools itself. These are for individual grants for children.
I see. Okay.
And a lot of times it's used for charter schools is mainly where you see it. This is one of the first times I've heard about it actually being directly given to a school with a religious background. It's they're usually used towards charter schools, which whole other episode we're going to do it another time because we've got a lot to say on that.
Yeah. So from the New York Times actually explained it like this. They ask whether states are free to erect a wall between church and state high enough to exclude religious groups from some state benefits. And they're calling it a proxy battle over school choice.
Mm-hmm.
So what if all there is available are religious schools? I mean, does proximity come into account at all?
That is a very good question.
That's a very good question. And the it's happening now where I'm at in Tennessee to where we don't have enough schools for the kids that are coming in.
Right.
Because the town is booming. And it's federally mandated that you have to have a certain amount of secular schools funded by the government in a certain demographic area with people. It has to be covered. They have to provide this.
So if all there is available is private schools, that's a failure on a government's part.
then we take this
Correct.
to
That's a whole other issue.
Separate.
right.
Okay,
Then we take
cool.
this to the Department of
Sorry,
Education.
connecting dots here.
No, that's totally fine. That is a valid concern, and not just with schools. There's also concerns about hospitals being religiously
Well,
affiliated.
this is what's happening with charter schools now.
Right.
With charter schools, they're putting these charter schools in these residential areas. The schools are performing better because they have the money to perform better.
Right.
So these parents they're wanting to send their kids to charter schools, and they're getting the school choice vouchers for them. And the standard federal schools are having such a low enrollment that they're closing. And now the charter schools are getting too big. And the charter schools can pick what kid they want to come in. So we've
Real quick, clarify for me the difference between public, private, and charter.
charter and private are kind of the same.
Yeah.
I thought charter was kind of
Charter does
free.
I believe charter has limited state benefits.
They have limited state benefits, and they have to abide by a stricter guideline of education curriculum and.
But they can receive scholarship.
Yes, I believe it's called the school choice program.
Yeah.
That parents can apply for. Their kids get the vouchers for them, and they apply them to the charter schools because it used to be selectively for higher privileged children. And people were like, this is fucked up,
Right.
But that's the problem that we're having is so many parents are pushing into these charter schools that the federal schools are closing down because of funding, because, they have low attendance. And now we're having a problem with kids in inner cities. Charter schools notoriously don't like taking disabled kids. They have quotas for minority children, and when they meet them, they don't accept them. So you've got kids going 2 hours away to school because that's what's available.
And then if we add on top of this, if this court case were to be ruled in favor of the parents, we have a whole other issue that would make this even harder because currently we have the Secretary of Education, Betsy Devos, in office. And, that face.
We're going to have to come back and talk about who that is in a second. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back to Betsy. But no, the issue here is that federally funded public schools are already being drained of money, drained of resources. They aren't being supported enough. And if we were to put it on the books that the state and federal governments could fund specifically religious schools and get rid of that barrier between church and state, then all of that money, depending on who is the Secretary of Education, would be funneled towards religious schools or whatever group of schools that they wanted. It would take away that level of anonymity.
That level of balance, right?
Even if you don't have any favor for religious schools and you're in the government working in that position, well, then it's easier to put more money in the private funded schools because they're already so established.
They have more money
They have more money,
yeah, absolutely.
And so it'd be easier to put those up to par.
And it's
to
also
our standard.
Because of that funding, our states measure on testing. Every state has a, GMAC, whatever you want to call them, but they have a state standardized test. And
it's a STAR test here, right?
It's the STAR test here, which, yeah. Anybody wants to talk about that, you got me. I work in that. But, but they look at how well a state's performing on their standardized test and say, well, this state is doing better. So let's give them more money. It's an incentive bonus. Ooh. And this is what happened with the Common Core standards as well, Tennessee being one of them. Tennessee is a very low-performing state for education.
Okay.
Always has been.
And all of the private schools and charter schools and
they also
public
have
schools are in the same pot?
Yes, they also have to issue the standardized testing.
And the same test?
The same test.
Okay.
Every kid in like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they all get the same standardized test. But with Tennessee, they said, well, if you adopt Common Core, we'll give you more money. And
What's Common Core?
Common Core is a whole new set of learning.
We just got a whole new segment of the show.
No, but it's let me break it down this way.
We'll reel it back. We'll talk about Common Core.
It's just a different way of computing and learning.
But the point is that they are able to put requirements and incentives on who gets the money. And right now, whether or not you are a religious school is not. You don't qualify for it based on religion because we put that wall up.
Because we put the wall of...
And because of this court case, that wall might start getting some more cracks.
I see.
And it's a slippery slope because if we start saying, okay, we're going to fund religious education, are we endorsing this now? Is this going to be the standard set education for the country? Are we going to mandate our children to go to religious education schools?
So are we slippery sloping it?
Yes, I think so. We're kind of... Oh, look, there's an ice hill, and like, how slippery is it?
Well, no, I think she means in terms of whether or not we're using a fallacy here, in terms of fear mongering.
Gotcha.
And it's difficult to talk about the slippery slope in terms of legislature and past precedent because it is literally a slippery slope. Depending on the definition and the decision that you get, you then get to use that to push other things.
Things
and that's
snowball
the whole
quickly.
point.
Yeah.
So it is a snowball effect, and calling that out, I don't think is technically a fallacy because we've seen it happen in the past. This is how this works. But that is a very good question for sure.
Well, because I'd always heard on, I don't know if you want to call it sides, but the way, with talking with my family, they would talk about how, in the legislature, if this is passed, then this will pass, then this will pass, then this will pass. And so when I started learning about fallacies and logic and all that, I was like, oh yeah, that's a slippery slope. They can't say that. And so I'm like, wait, okay, they kind of can.
Right, because we've actually got the voting records and backing and decisions that are like, oh, we see what happens when that happens. It's like you find the crack in the door with the ants.
Right. There's a difference between a slippery slope fallacy and the acknowledgement of cause and effect.
Right.
Okay, I see that. Okay.
Yeah.
So cool. The big concern with this, with Betsy Devos being in, is she is extremely religious.
Yeah.
And greedy.
So who is she?
She is the Secretary of Education.
And why is this significant?
She's in charge of the funding. She's in charge of what sets the curriculum.
For the entire country.
For the entire country. And she is one greedy bitch.
And it's all down to her. It's not like a panel of people like in other court, other judges.
They can make suggestions, but at the end of the day, she's like, no, I'm the Secretary of Education, and this is how this shit's going to come down, and this is what we're going to pass for it.
Is it interesting that we have groups of people in charge of things in government, but one person in charge of the principal, one secretary of this, one, like one person?
And it comes down to we have to figure out a way to calm infighting. So if we have the one authoritarian.
Exactly. It's a
sorry, side note, just noticing
we're going to do this a lot, everyone. It's like, wait, side. Okay.
I'm very easily distracted, so.
We're good.
That's why we love her.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is getting scheduled for January 22nd.
Right.
And start hearing arguments for this.
So this doesn't come down to the panel of judges that the other Supreme Court stuff is. Oh,
now it will.
Okay.
Now it will.
Yes.
We took it away from Betsy.
Yes.
Yes. Although Betsy will then be able to use whatever this court decides to
set a precedent.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, Betsy DeVos, like I said, is very religious. And I don't know if you guys know the history of Betsy DeVos, but her husband made his fortune in the Amway company.
What's that?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Let me explain. Amway is the oldest and
They
biggest.
love how uninformed I am. Let me tell you.
Amway is the oldest and biggest MLM cult you'll ever come
Cult
across.
according to who?
Cult according to anybody who has fucking common sense in their goddamn head.
Okay.
But they are the insurance, you're going to get rich. We have to call it MLM. You know, you have your upline and your up person.
Okay.
And you have to,
Fun
that's
story.
it.
I was in Amway for like 5 months.
No.
As a
I'm
college
so
kid.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
It was fucking sketchy as fuck.
Are we going to have a whole nother show about how you got out?
Probably.
Yes, we should have.
Honestly, it was
Actually,
my
we should
lack
do
of
that.
ability to perform.
We're
I
not
was
even
like,
gonna
I
do
can't
religious
get on the
deconversion.
phone and talk to people. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, we're not even going to do religious deconversion. Now we're just solely going to focus on MLM deconversion.
They wanted
from
you
now.
to do like call center type stuff to reach out
To my
and
friends.
to
lure
your friends.
to sell them things.
And
They
to have them
came
work
to
under
my
you.
door
What kind of things
and
would you
sat in my
sell?
door.
Because I'm
That's
picturing
life insurance, I want to say is.
That's what I
Amway,
did.
right?
No.
That's what I did.
You did life insurance.
I
I'm
did
thinking
life insurance.
Primerica is
No,
the, yeah.
Amway was supplements,
Yes.
jewelry, makeup, just like the most random shit. And
But
it was like, hey, haven't
her
talked to you in a
husband-
year. Do you want to
the-
buy a lipstick from me so
The
I can
ice
get
cream
a
truck
point?
and the kid and the puppy and the ice cream truck.
Basically,
Yeah.
that's what that is.
But it's this is how her husband made, I mean, millions upon millions of dollars. And I have to question when a woman looks at someone and goes, you've scammed millions of people out of millions of dollars and
Let's
ruined
get
their
married.
lives. You're the most fantastic person I've ever met in my life. Now, what she also did was she's also in charge of companies that collect interest, debt collection companies for student loans. It's her companies that they sell the student loans off to for debt collection. And she is now releasing the federal mandates of there is only so much that you can cap as interest. There is only so much you can collect. There has to be a certain amount of time before you turn it over to a debt collection agency. So we have the precedent that she's a shady bitch when it comes down to money.
Wait, so she didn't used to be in charge of this?
No.
And now she
She was
is?
appointed. Yes.
was
According to
appointed.
who?
This administration.
This administration.
This administration just up and decided, hey, let's give her some more power because she's got
Yeah, zero education.
Jesus on her
She
side,
She
I
had
guess?
no background in this. This was something that she was appointed to, and the Supreme Court.
Me helping my son with homework has given me more of a background in
Not the
education than Betsy
Senate.
DeVos.
So I'm confused how she got there, how she got this extra privilege.
The president appointed her, and then the Senate confirmed her. And that's how that worked.
Ta-da! You now have a
And
wonderful job.
We can talk about this for a
All
while
day.
because she's not even the worst.
Is
no.
she that chick?
Is she that chick?
How do I-
Which one are we going to talk about
How do
today?
I?
She's the one that said that she
Jenna's
felt.
too nice for this shit.
Yeah,
not
she's
truly
like,
a
I don't.
bitch
She's
yet.
the one that.
We'll get her into bitch territory soon.
She actually
Hold
like
on.
milked people hate me so much that she brought armed guards with her to schools when she was speaking at them. She had like armed
She got
security
kicked
with her.
out when she first started trying to visit schools
Yeah.
on her first like
But
tour
she
through.
felt so threatened by a bunch of fifth graders that she had to have armed Secret Service with her when she would go to elementary school.
Oh, she was also the one
wow.
who defended having guns in schools in case grizzly bears attacked.
She was the Grizzly Bears once. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, Sarah Palin.
How often does this happen? No, seriously.
That would be a very good
Let's
question
Google
to
it.
ask Betsy if she could do
can see
that.
a deer, but a
that's
grizzly
who
bear.
Betsy DeVos is,
right.
I guess.
Now, what we're worried about with her is she's in charge of the block grants. And if we turn around and allow
Wait. What's that?
block grants are the money that they give to states and schools and shit.
So
for.
it's just a lump of money goes to one
you
state.
get a pool every year.
Yeah.
And they
then
figure out how to
state
break it up
Breaks it up.
by state.
Interesting. Okay.
If she's so into religion that we're afraid if she's like, okay, we can now give this to religious education, she's going to take the portion of the bulk of it and allocate it to religious schooling. And then whatever's kind of left over we can do for those, secular folk who are just burning in hell and, those are who we pray for on a Sunday morning.
Okay, so
when
if
we're giving
this
10% of our
ruling-
income to the church.
So if this ruling is what passed or not passed?
Not yet. We will be hearing arguments on the 22nd of January.
We haven't heard anything.
No.
Yet. We just know
The
what
Montana
happened and why it's
Supreme
there.
Court called the provision unconstitutional,
Yes, they
and
said
they
no.
nixed it.
Yeah.
So the precedent so far has been that the state Supreme Court has said that you're right. This is the way that this is set up is not constitutional. We're nixing it, and no one can use it now because it clearly was opening doors we didn't want opened.
Right.
So now they're moving to the Supreme Court.
And then if it opens those doors, then we're on a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
And so that's why and it's all down to this one case. Like it's not like it's.
Yeah.
Are you?
And this
what?
is this is why the Supreme Court is so important.
This is the we can't pray in school, so now let's try the books, and now we can't do the books, so let's try the money.
It's a game.
It's a game.
I hate games.
It's chess. And where I find the sympathy is, I'm a parent. And I'm, even moving down to Texas, I'm like, I have to find the best school system and I want my kid to have the best education. These parents turned around and said, I think this is exactly the education that would be perfect for my child. They were then told, yes. Go ahead, use the money. Nope. I'd be pissed. I'd be like, oh, hell no. You mean you know how long it takes to research a goddamn school? Months.
They were told that they could use the money by who?
It was
by the program. The
program was like, here, use this money for your school, and then after
the program, the federal aided program.
Yes.
Okay. Said you can use this for this religious school.
The state-funded program that was giving money.
State-funded. I see.
Said, sure, use this for the school for your kid.
Even though that doesn't normally happen.
No, not with religious education. No, it doesn't.
No. So then they backtracked and they're like, oh wait, we have a Blaine Amendment in our state constitution which prohibits us, all of this stuff. And so they're like, okay, we can't give money to religious schools as the state. Right. So never mind, you can't use them for religious schools. And these three parents were like, wait a second, about to do that.
No, this was right in the
right.
Oh my
but I feel like I can't even be mad at the parents for bringing this court case because in truth, I probably would too.
I would too.
You promised me, you hyped me up for this. I got excited for my kid.
And y'all said it was okay.
Yeah, especially if like the kids' friends are going to school there. You're going to school with your friends, and then you watch your kids' friggin' heartbreak.
So this is interesting
because
I know I have a lot of people who do send their kids to religious schools because they do have a lot more money, and the classes that are important are better kept and better, updated textbooks and have really good teachers and all that.
Right.
And so they're like, hey, secular kids, just do that extra class, do whatever you want.
Right.
Just comply.
Right.
And so, what do we do?
Yeah, because this is interesting because this case is not like a black and white. This isn't like as far as I know, part of the Project Blitz, right?
I don't think it's part of Project Blitz.
I doubt it is unless they're funding it in some way.
I just think it was parents that got pissed off. Yeah.
So Project Blitz is going to be a whole other topic that we're going to delve into.
That's going to be a really good.
That's going to be so good. But basically, it is a bunch of Christian lobbyists and organizations that are very well funded that are coordinating attacks on First Amendment rights with the explicit intention of limiting the rights of non-religious
I need subtitles.
people.
I need to read this. What?
We're going to have a running scroll for Jenna. Soon.
Can you just say that one more time?
Sure. So there are Christian organizations and lobby groups that are very well funded, very rich, and they are coordinating across the country to work with politicians that they have in their pocket to pass legislation that's things like have In God We Trust in schools, things that right now are like tier 1. They've got 3 tiers of like their game plan.
I know abortion is top tier.
Their goal is to disenfranchise LGBTQ people, prohibit abortion and women's health care, and disenfranchise anybody who is not a Christian. Right. And that is explicitly stated in their goals. And it's a coordinated effort.
It's actually a mission statement that they call it. Yeah.
Or like there's no boundary against super extremist, fuck religious, like extremist lobbyists?
No.
because money is free speech.
Yeah, money's free speech. And you can fund and get funding from whatever the hell you want. We can do a whole other episode on that.
So basically, we're a country that just really likes rich people.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's, yep.
And we like this.
And we don't like it, but the people that make the laws like it.
Because they get the money.
That's why
the
I always say.
The show is just us breaking Jenna's spirit. I just feel really
Jenna
bad
has
now.
lost all hope in humanity.
All right, want to hear a good story? Let's hear a hopeful story and a positive way that we can start
Do we have one here? Right
Yes,
Yes.
we have a positive fucking story
now? Do
that
we actually fucking have one when
came
dealing with
out
shit like this?
yesterday.
Ooh.
Yesterday being January 4th. January 4th, Patheos published an article, School Places the Satanic Temple's 7 Tenets in Classroom.
I love it.
Yes.
The children ran an Oxford-style debate for or against the 10 Commandments and the 7 Tenets. And the children voted yet anonymously to place the Satanic Temple's tenets up on their school walls.
What school district and what state was this?
This is Cambridge, Massachusetts,
The
which
students of Cambridge, Massachusetts, we salute you.
Yeah.
7th graders.
Seventh graders.
And we salute
wasn't this put
anybody
together
who
in
had
seventh
a part
grade.
in influencing these kids. We salute
man.
that whole county.
I've got to hand it to their parents because let me tell you, I wasn't this put together in 7th grade. I was just like, what lipstick am I wearing today that looks horrible?
So let's talk about why we're happy about this, because I know that my family watching this right now would freak out and think that I actually am the devil and a devil worshiper. So let's clarify why we actually think this is a good thing, even though we're not Satanists.
No.
Right. So here's the reason it's good. The Satanic Temple is an organization that is specifically founded to combat the religious overreach in government.
Right.
So what they would do is if a religious group was lobbying to have a 10 Commandments statue on public property, they would also lobby to have a statue of Baphomet on the public property. And then that would force people to look at all religion, not just Christian ones.
To be fair,
not even
though.
theist ones, because Satanists, the majority of them, at least the ones that are being activists right now, are atheistic.
But there is a sect of Satanism that takes us as a religion.
But just to be very, very clear, this does not mean that we worship Satan.
No, in fact, here are the 7 fundamental tenets. I have them here. These are what the students voted for as opposed to the 10 Commandments, which we all kind of know.
I have like butterflies in my heart
if
right
you
now
don't
for
know
this.
them,
If you don't know them, good for
Google
you.
it.
Don't Google it. You don't need to know that shit. The 7 fundamental tenets. 1 should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willingly and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own.
Which is why we do what we do.
Exactly. Beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused.
woo! I like that one.
We could use a little bit of that in the atheist community sometimes too, you know?
That's fair. And the last one, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
I'm keeping this.
right.
I think I'm going to frame this and put it in my kitchen.
Right.
So I think we need to provide links for posters.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure.
I think we should start selling them here at the ACA.
Yeah.
Coordinate with the Satanic Temple.
I mean, if you
Hey, I
just
know
drop
quite a
the
few
name,
people
like
who
for
could do
all
this.
those black and white thinkers, like if you just drop the satanic border and all that, just read the middle, the rules, and just read those. What do you think? You know,
And to me, that I'm like, why wasn't this shit the 10 Commandments? Like, this is just like
it's
be
so
a
much
good
better.
And this is what you get. The Bible, it's a great story on how to be a good person. You got to now. Remember, I'm Catholic, so we go by that Old Testament shit.
you were Catholic.
I
honey.
was Catholic. I was Catholic.
Okay.
Much too many people praying for me to still be there. I am not. But we followed the Old Testament. It was you had to see a wrathful God to see a forgiving God. And I'm just like, and it's a great story about being a good person. I'm like, why the fuck are we not following that?
Right, exactly.
Because
And
that's
the funny
pretty much
thing
what
is,
it says.
There
Don't be a
have
dick.
there have been atheist people who have like brought this to their religious people, not tell them like what it's from, and they agreed 100%.
they're like, this is great.
Guess what? Guess what, you guys? You're Satanists.
Because that's pretty much saying, don't be a dick. Your ability to swing your fist ends at my nose.
It's little tests like that. I love those. That like those. Let's bring this to my priest and see what he says.
Right.
Those honest to God, well, honest to fucking Peter Pan, true tests that those are what expose religion to people like us.
Yeah.
And that's why we keep talking about the same shit over and over and over again, is because like what we said earlier is, if you just hear it in just a little bit of a different way,
Yeah.
It makes people think.
it made each one of us stop and think.
If you're going to come in with already a conscious bias, you're going to slam down for it.
Yeah, it's hard to break
I would
that.
love to actually bring that to my old church. Because we had more of like really young liberal priests that were just like, be good people.
Be good people.
Are you still in touch with them?
No, I have actually been taken off the rolls for the Catholic Church.
I wonder why.
Off the rolls.
Yes.
What roles did you have?
They put you on rolls to say this is who we have as membership, and it's a.
They showed this to you?
I knew about it as who's part of the congregation, and with the Catholic Church, there's like a set of standards and guidelines. You just can't walk in and be like, I don't believe in God anymore. Fucking take me off. They won't do it.
Right. Right.
So it's been said I had an abortion. So I actually brought the medical records with me and was like,
take me
please
off.
don't use my name anymore. Thank you.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
I was told by someone in my family that in order for them to be consciously allowed to attend my wedding, because it wasn't a Catholic wedding, it was a Christian wedding, but it wasn't Catholic. They said that I had to go to the bishop and get him to sign off on me not being a Catholic anymore.
That's what I had to do. Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I would do that, but on principle, I won't. Because
it's still
I don't have to
asking.
get permission. That's the whole fucking point of this,
Right.
is I don't have to get permission.
Right.
I am my own boss, Sorry, back to
No,
the
it's
point.
fine. That was the one thing I was happy to ask permission for from the Catholic Church was take me the fuck off
me
this
off.
shit.
Yeah. So there's something I want to bring up as we talk about, how to fix this
Yeah.
as little people, right? I went out to my hometown. I don't know if y'all all know, I grew up kind of in the Bible Belt. And I went out there to visit an old friend and went to the taco shop in town. And there was a little girl there at a picnic table. And she had, I don't know if y'all know, the Chick Tracts.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who don't know, my experience with Chick Tracts, and they'll tell you what they actually are. In high school, I was learning Spanish, and I had to translate something from Spanish to English, and I found a Chick Tract because there's a lot of times there's a Spanish version available.
Yes.
And so I wanted to do that for my homework assignment. And I was a Catholic, and this one was called the Death Cookie. And it talked about how communion is the death cookie, and it's going to take you to the devil and blah, 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 blah.
No.
And I went to my dad crying. And I was like, why would somebody say that?
Well, I mean-
and I was just confused.
It is kind of akin to cannibalism, so I can kind of
But
understand
it was just so dark and scary,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
black and purple, and had the scary illustrations.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, Chick Tracts are
Oh my gosh.
notoriously frightening.
so
Yes.
I went and showed it to my dad, and he was like, you know what? Some people just don't want you to be here. And I was like,
Oh my
okay.
God.
So I was like, I guess
How
I
old
just-
were you?
High school. So
Still.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Who says that shit to the
But
kids?
he was, but he meant it from a place that he was trying to warn me,
Yeah.
Right.
about people. He was trying to prepare me because the world is big and scary.
Yep.
But it's if you don't prepare your kids,
Right, and
that's
this
what
is,
makes it big and scary. And so basically back to the story, this little girl has this Chick Tract, and I'm thinking back, and I'm an atheist now, and I'm like, oh shit, where did she get that?
Yeah.
So I asked her where she got it, and she's like, the lunch lady gave it to me and my friends.
Oh my God, I'd be making moves to have that bitch
Oh.
fired so goddamn fast.
Yeah, that's not okay.
So
no.
basically, this kind of brings us to what we can do. So I found out, I did some research, and I found out that I could go to ffrf.org,
Yep.
which is freedomfromreligion.org, and it's basically a site that handles lawsuits against any kind of organization that's crossing lines when it comes to freedom from religion.
Right.
Yeah.
Religion versus
And
government.
FFRF has actually gotten involved with other Supreme Court cases as well.
Oh yeah, actually
heavily.
at the last American Atheist Convention, they had a panel of people who they had helped sue different religious organizations.
that have been brought to a SCOTUS level. Yeah.
Right.
So that's my
Yeah, definitely.
Experience.
Ask
But that-
questions,
Yeah.
access FFRF. They it's there for you as a resource if you are concerned.
Right.
And then that's the whole point. Like all of these cases, all of this precedent that we've been discussing, this court case right now, these are all instigated by individuals, right? These are all people who say, I see a problem and I'm going to raise awareness about it.
Exactly.
And I'm going to take it to my local, my federal government.
It starts at state government,
Right.
which then keeps going along.
No, it starts with us.
Well, no, we're saying that when they do bring the cases, it starts at the state. And
Well, I
then
mean, you're
keeps-
totally right. But the reason I say that is because, I mean, this is why we're doing this show.
Right.
Right? It's because it starts with the little people. Because even if you don't have the
Jen scares
ability.
an actual little bit.
Well, we're all
I'm
pretty
not-
little, actually.
I'm 4'10", okay? We're not going to get into this.
But even if you don't have the ability to go to the town hall meetings, or you
Right.
don't have the ability to, whatever, all that you have to do at least is just start talking about it.
Yes.
And when it's interesting when I'm talking to people about how I'm on this new show and it's called Godless Bitches, and I get that reaction, and
Oh, yeah.
and I'm like, well, but the whole point is that we're
one.
taking back this this slanderous name that's been slapped on us and saying, you know what, you call us a godless bitch, that's fucking fine. This is how godless bitches talk.
And we've been called way worse.
Right?
Believe me,
Like
that's
we
not gonna
have discussion.
Yeah.
We're respectful in general.
Right.
So
Every once in a while,
So-
there's some people that, right.
anybody can do this. Anybody can get together with friends and talk about serious stuff. And
Anybody
then
can be a godless bitch.
butterfly effect. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love that.
And it brings out the isolation
Yeah,
that
it's more
happens with being
community
raised
building.
religion. And I've been doing this forever. I had my 16-year-old cousin literally didn't know that my previous marriage was legal because she was really convinced it wasn't because I wasn't married in a church. And it's okay, so we need to bring you out of this isolation.
right.
And just even sitting talking about it, you guys were, I wasn't really raised like that, but the two of you were. And just sitting talking about it, you start to learn. And you're like, wait, this is fucked up. And then it's like, wait, you mean I can do something? You never know who you're talking to. You never know who you're going to spark. You never know who's going to.
Exactly. And share your experience because you never know who can learn from just a little tiny piece of it.
Right.
Right.
Hey, yeah, so what I did was I ended up brushing my teeth before my shower, like you just never know.
That actually happened. Like I had like a bunch of friends that were like, I brushed my teeth in the shower, and I'm like, let me try this shit. Holy shit, this is
it's
magical.
just whatever. I'm just saying. Now we're going to have a whole thing about brushing teeth
know, right?
in showers.
Other
No,
things.
I love this.
Other things you can do, and this is kind of something that I thought of it as a parent. My kid, they don't have textbooks anymore, but they bring home Amazon forest levels of fucking paper worksheets every day. And I go through every one of them because I'm what is my kid learning? And we had the issue where he was doing something for Martin Luther King Day and they were teaching him to say colored people.
Oh no.
Wow.
And I held it together for my kid and I'm like, I know this is what the school's saying and I know this is what you're being taught, but this is why we don't call people of color colored people.
Oh, jeez.
And then I went up to the school and collectively lost my shit. And I actually had the argument with his former teacher of, well, I'm not comfortable calling them black people. And I'm like, are you uncomfortable being called a white person? No. But it's,
I know plenty of white people who are uncomfortable being called a white person.
But he also came home one day and was starting to say mammy. And this was being taught in the schools, like the traditional black mammy mother, grandmother.
God.
So watch what your kids are fucking bringing home. Watch what they're writing, what they're being taught, especially about world leaders, because this is where it starts. When you come from very small towns, they will say shit like colored people for black leaders.
Well, yeah.
And that's where it starts. That's where that.
Because you're in the South, right?
Yeah. My kids
This is just old South shit that just hasn't been weeded out
But
yet.
this is
And
how we continue the line of thinking.
Right,
This is
just
how we
because
get it weeded out.
Right.
You send your kid to school, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a say in
Right,
what they're
and-
learning and how they're being taught. It's not something that's been taken off of your plate necessarily.
right.
It's something that you still have a responsibility to your kids to be invested in.
And they also
Especially if
put-
it's public school.
They also put club flyers like in between the papers. And then you could see if they're hosting religious groups on school grounds during
That's good
school
to know.
hours. Pay attention to every piece of paper your kid brings home. Look at what they're writing. Look at what they're talking about. Go up to the classroom, see what the shit on the wall says. See the books that are available.
Now, this is interesting, and I don't know if this is going to be a whole new rabbit hole or not, but when it comes to consent with your kids and their stuff and monitoring what they're doing versus invading their privacy, where's that line?
I just like to keep up on his work, but in my house, we have our bedrooms, and if your bedroom door is closed, your bedroom door is closed. It's very much kind of like this is my son's job, is to go to school. And I'm kind of like his boss. So I'm just like, you know what? I just want to make sure you're doing your fucking work, dude. I don't want to see the notes that you pass back and forth to your friends.
I see. Just ask him for it.
Right.
And let me see what your teacher's handing out to you.
They have a red folder that they bring home every day. And the parents have to go through it, and some things you have to return to school. So it makes it much easier to, as far as this personal shit, I'm like,
it's not like go through she's not saying go through your kids' lunchbox. I'm not saying and every single pocket of
they're writing some diary shit. No, don't do that. Your child is their own fucking person. Give them their autonomy. But look and see what they're being taught.
Right. Read the textbook.
Read the text and say something. I've walked up to my child's school and every year when we have the open house, I need to know where you stand on teaching religious education and religious ideas in your classroom. I say it every year.
So did you discuss that with your kid?
We have. My son's autistic, so it's approaching it very differently because he's very black and white, and it's either logic or it's not.
Okay.
So when we have brought up religion, I do tell him, some people believe that this happens, and this is what they believe. And until they're encroaching on you or they're pushing on you, respect it.
Right.
I don't believe in this. If this is something you want to research, I will help you out as best I can. If I can't, we'll go see fucking clergy members and, ask the questions.
Well, do you tell him, like, when he's going through his schoolwork, hey, pay attention to this, pay attention to that, or do you just not say anything?
I don't want to push my kid too much. So if he's struggling in a certain area, I'm like, we're going to sit down with this. But if he's doing well and I can see that he's comprehending what's going on, I kind of let it be.
Okay.
But like when it comes down to, he physically wrote colored. I was like, no, we're sitting down. And we're
sitting down.
No, I was like, you brought this shit home to the wrong mother. No.
Well, good for you.
Yeah,
good for you for saying something, because a lot of people would just, either withdraw their kid and go to a different school or just complain to the other parents or, and just not really do anything about it. So that's huge.
Yeah, no, that's where they slip it in. Pay attention to what your kids are bringing home if you have kids in the school system. If you don't have kids in the school system, there's town halls and shit.
Right?
Look where the money's going.
Local town hall meetings, school board, district meetings. Just be aware of who is being elected in your town, in your city, in your state, and be available to cast a vote when you can.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also believe that schools have to show their funding every year. Like
where
on
and
paper.
how?
I believe you might
like
have
a
to ask
newsletter or
districts.
something? Or?
You may have to ask the districts, can I have a report of your funding for the
Okay,
year?
so maybe that's something to ask about.
Yeah.
Right. Figure out where the money's coming from, where it's going to.
Yeah.
If they're donating money to Chick-fil-A.
Well, if they're receiving money.
Okay.
Because
receiving, I see.
Donating is one thing. But when you're getting money from somebody, you're a little bit more inclined to push their agenda.
Well, I think you would if you're donating to too, right?
Well, donations from, I don't know if schools,
Can schools donate?
They do fundraisers that are done by the kids that they can donate the money
the
to.
school. I
Right.
see.
Each school can individually do it because holy shit, if I got to buy any more fucking cookie dough at fucking $35 for 8 fucking cookies, I'm done. Seriously. Like,
It's
I
the most
can't.
expensive cookie dough.
I don't fucking get it. I'm like, what the fuck do you need cereal boxes tops for? What the fuck are we doing? It's like a pop top donation thing, and I'm like, well, fuck, that's a good cause. I mean, fuck it, we'll do that. And that's how we ate Captain Crunch for a solid fucking month in my house. Another thing you could do is, I know at least where we're from, my kid brings home a folder every day with the work that he's done. Go through the worksheets. Go through the pamphlets, the tiny little school club pamphlets that, come in. Read what your kids are especially in English language arts, read what they're studying, read what they're writing to see if something may border on the, I don't know if we should be
Spark
teaching
Notes,
this.
the books that
Yes.
they're reading, that they're being assigned to
Well,
read.
they don't do books anymore with us. It's computerized and then they do printouts.
Well, but I mean, like, you could look up online, sparknotes.com, and look whatever they're reading, whether it's online or actually tactile. You can look up the SparkNotes and figure out what kind of book is this? Like, is this manipulative? Is this factual.
Right.
You know, what is this?
Especially with now that we can kind of freely use language between creationism and evolution, especially in the South.
Right, exactly.
Pay attention to what your kids are bringing home. Look in between the papers for the little flyers for the clubs that come home to see if schools are hosting religious groups on grounds during school hours, all that.
Research where your school funding is coming from
Yeah.
and going to. And then kind of make sure that you just know what's going on. Attend school board meetings, attend town halls.
A lot of districts have district town halls to kind of go over the funding for the year and, you know, what the curriculum's going to be. Attend those. Ask questions. Hey, what is this? What does this class have? This looks a little bit, you say mythology. What fucking mythology are we covering here?
Right.
You know? Just get involved. And this is ground level. Checking your kids' shit. What is my kids doing? You know, what are they doing? Go to the district meetings.
Right. And if you see something that's really wrong and rubs you the wrong way, do some research. Reach out to FFRF, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. They have lawyers who help individuals bring court cases that defend their rights. Last year at the American Atheist Convention in Cincinnati, they had a panel of people that they had helped to bring court cases to, I believe it was the Supreme Court, to defend the separation of church and state. So all of this past precedent, everything that has been stopped in its tracks so far, is the result of individuals standing up and saying, I don't feel good about this, don't do this.
This is
I want
this
an
is a little
explanation.
shady on.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's also something you can do. That is a tool you are free to use.
Yep.
And in the meantime, keep watching.
Yep.
We will be here every month
Every month,
to talk with you and to keep you updated on what's going on.
bring you more stories to complete you get totally pissed off and want to get out and do something.
Yeah.
That's our jobs here, ladies.
Yep.
You know, folks, that's our jobs.
So thank you so much for watching. We will be back with an episode on the anti-vax movement.
Yes, and that's going to be a very angry Gen one. So
So tune in.
Tune
In the
in.
meantime,
don't just sit and bitch.
Get up and do something.